Well, in the first place, Europe today is much more consumed about internal problems than it is with external problems. So you can clearly see a shift in terms of what occupies the minds of key political leaders. If you need to have prime ministers and presidents around Europe hiving off to Brussels every now and then for crisis summits, that of course means they have less time for other things. And I think we have seen that in the past years, especially in 2011. We've also seen, of course, a weakening European economy overall, even if the sovereign debt crisis we've seen in individual countries like Greece, Ireland, Portugal, etc., even if those crises are fairly marginal for the overall Eurozone economy, it has put a drag on economic growth, and of course this has speeded up the relative decline of Europe, and the relative decline in the world economy of course means that it has less clout. It has less appeal when it tries to court other governments in the world to achieve different things. So I think these are the two main casualties of the crisis so far. We might see more casualties in the future, but so far I think it's concentrated on a lack of attention on the part of key political leaders in Europe and the speeding up of relative decline. Well, so far it hasn't really provoked any crises or provoked political leaders on the both sides to change what was going on before the crises in Europe and in the West. I think what we've seen in the past 5 years is a shift where it is increasingly difficult for European governments and for European Union institutions to deal with China. You see a triumphalism on the part of China, where they are less eager to play that sort of a junior role to bigger giants in the world economy like the EU and the United States. So you see much more assertive action on the part of them when it comes to actually being part of deciding what's going to happen in world economy terms and consequently also in EU-China relations. One thing that may have changed, I think, is the fact that many of the crisis responses in Europe during this crisis has entrenched what I've been calling the postmodern political personality of the EU, which is a personality which is different from the classic type of state and the classic type of government where you have hard power and you have clear responsibilities about who is going to do what in the event of a crisis. What we've seen in Europe now is these perpetual negotiations about crisis responses and about what the EU itself can do and what it cannot do. And I think this has led to a situation where China has increasing difficulties of understanding how does Europe really work, or to put it differently, who is in charge here? Most certainly, I think both in terms of the United States and the European Union's bilateral relations to China and in terms of what the United States and European want to do multilaterally through international organizations. I think there are huge benefits, huge gains to be made for both sides if they decide to collaborate when it comes to critical issues where China is at the center. In the first place, I think you're going to see it much more easy to get Beijing to accept some of the demands that both the United States and Europe has on China in terms of opening up markets, being much more reliable when it comes to intellectual property rights, being less protectionistic and being less opaque when it comes to its commercial policies. And so far, Beijing has been having a fairly easy life in terms of dividing Washington and Brussels up, in a sense, as long as they are not cooperating with each other, you're going to make life very easy for people in Beijing. So I think in this sense, if you're going to see stronger cooperation either on bilateral issues toward China or more generally crafting new developments for the world economy on trade, on investment, on monetary affairs. I think you're going to see a China which is going to be much more eager to do what the United States and Europe actually want China to do.